In One Piece, beneath the waves of grand adventure, lies something far more personal. Behind its fantastical world are deeply human struggles that drive motivation, forge identity, and even cultivate self-destructive behaviors. By diving into the motivational psychology of Zoro, we can unravel how his unwavering code of honor also becomes the very force that endangers his journey to become the world's greatest swordsman. Let's uncover the psychology of what makes One Piece the greatest story of all time. Zoro's childhood depicts a stable and supportive environment where his physiological and safety needs are well met. He is physically healthy, lives in a peaceful village, and trains at a structured dojo. There he experiences belonging through his relationships with peers, mentors, and rivals. Over time, a deeper esteem need emerges, driven by his rivalry with Kuina. Despite consistently losing to Kuina, Zoro continues to challenge her, not out of hostility, but in pursuit of validation. At this point, Zoro has an avenue to fulfill his esteem needs. Kuina serves as a symbol of personal excellence and remains the only person capable of validating his developing sense of esteem. The catastrophic event occurs immediately after Zoro and Kuina reaffirm their shared goal of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Kuina dies, reportedly due to an accident. This event abruptly ends the one relationship through which Zoro believed he could fulfill his esteem needs. By this point, he has already defeated every other opponent he respected, and only Kuina remained as a benchmark, capable of validating his growth. Her death eliminates the only avenue he had for meaningful comparison and recognition. Zoro's reaction to Kuina's death suggests he experienced it not as a mere accident, but as a personal betrayal, an abandonment of their shared promise. Kuina's earlier despair, wishing she had been born male, reveals deep frustration over the gendered limitations imposed on her dreams. While there's no direct evidence that the shock of puberty triggered suicidal thoughts, her emotional conflict over being biologically female adds weight to interpretations of her death as a response to despair, which in turn implicates in Zoro that she somehow chose to walk away from their promise. This resonates with broader experiences in the trans community, where the onset of puberty can trigger deep psychological distress, as the body begins to change in ways that feel alien or oppositional to one's internal sense of self, often marking a critical period of trauma in early identity development. Zoro internalizes this loss as the collapse of his esteem. With no one left to challenge him or affirm his worth, he redirects his motivation onto a new target. This shift marks the beginning of Zoro's long-term pursuit of self-esteem through engagement with social systems that offer recognition, challenge, and validation of his unmet need. Zoro's insecurity about his abilities and his need to prove himself, rooted in unmet esteem needs, led to a harsh self-discipline and a refusal to rely on others. Before joining the Straw Hat crew, he coped by relentlessly pursuing strength alone, guided by a rigid code of honor and a fear of appearing weak. His new rivalry with Mihawk acts as a pseudo-satisfier for his esteem needs, enabling him to cope with the loss of the path that once could have satisfied these needs in childhood. At first glance, the world government's bounty hunting system appears to offer Zoro a socially legitimate place in which he can thrive. He is granted the freedom to act independently, choosing his targets, traveling where he wishes, and relying on his own strength and judgment. This creates a strong perception of autonomy. This system also nurtures a sense of competence. Through bounty hunting, Zoro takes on increasingly formidable opponents, using combat not just to earn rewards, but to sharpen his skills in pursuit of his ultimate goal, becoming the world's greatest swordsman. His ability to navigate this environment reinforces his belief that his choices lead to meaningful growth and advancement. Zoro also sustains relatedness during this period. His bonds with fellow bounty hunters, Johnny and Yosaku, reflect camaraderie and shared purpose. Even brief encounters, such as his protection of Rika from Helmeppo's abuse, reveal a capacity for empathy and connection, grounded in a personal code of honor. Together, these experiences simulate an environment of intrinsic motivation, even within a government-sanctioned system. Zoro's adherence to deals and agreements is underpinned by a strong moral code, but that code develops over time through progression of internalization. Each stage of his development reflects a deeper integration of regulators into Zoro's personal identity. As a young swordsman, Zoro's initial motivation to follow rules or honor agreements stems from a desire to gain recognition and respect from others. Keeping his word, acting with discipline, and upholding deals serve to maintain a reputation of reliability and strength. His sense of value is tied to external praise. He follows the rules to be perceived as worthy by his peers. After Kuina's death, Zoro's behavior is motivated by the guilt and emotional pressure to live up to their shared dream. The desire to honor her life causes him to push himself relentlessly, and his commitment to keeping promises become a self-imposed burden. As Zoro matures, he comes to value the principle of honor in its own right. He sees moral worth in keeping one's word and begins to uphold agreements because he believes they are meaningful. This is no longer just about avoiding guilt or pleasing others. He understands and accepts the personal significance of his values. Whether it's a promise made to a rival, a deal struck with an enemy, or a commitment to a stranger, Zoro acts out of a personally endorsed belief in the virtue of keeping one's word. Ultimately, Zoro's beliefs about honor and promises become fully integrated into his identity. He doesn't just think keeping one's word is good. He sees himself as someone who must keep his word. This explains his decision to endure ludicrous punishments like starvation and captivity under Helmeppo's command. He made a promise, and that alone is enough to motivate his behavior. Even when he is unsure whether others will honor his agreement, Zoro remains bound to his own. His honor becomes inseparable from his identity. The system begins to unravel when Koby informs Zoro that Helmeppo never intended to keep his word. This betrayal destabilizes the entire foundation upon which Zoro's motivation was built. Zoro realizes he was never in control. His choices, made in good faith, were manipulated from the start. His sense of autonomy collapses under the weight of betrayal. Zoro, who had believed he was navigating the system effectively, identifying threats, negotiating outcomes, surviving trials, now recognizes that he misread the situation entirely. The rules he thought he was playing by were never real. His sense of competence erodes as he doubts his judgment and situational awareness. Helmeppo's dishonesty severs trust, suggesting that the system Zoro engaged with is incapable of fostering mutual respect. The possibility of relatedness within this social structure disappears. Once the deception is exposed, the external regulators he once used to motivate himself are severed. Zoro's integrated values remain, but the world government no longer reflects or respects them. His actions no longer lead to meaningful outcomes, and he is left with no structure to justify continued engagement with the system. In this moment, Zoro enters a state of amotivation. Specifically, strategy beliefs, involving skepticism that the behavior will lead to desired outcomes. Zoro literally does not see a future where he will be able to live to pursue his dream unless he becomes a pirate with Luffy. This is what enables Zoro to realign himself under Luffy's leadership, an environment where his autonomy, competence, and relatedness will be rebuilt on a more authentic foundation. Zoro's childhood esteem needs were deeply shaken after the death of Kuina, the only swordsman he considered his equal. In response, Zoro developed a rigid coping mechanism, an obsessive need to surpass the strongest swordsman in the world Dracul Mihawk. This goal functioned as a way to pseudo-satisfy his esteem needs by projecting his unresolved loss onto a new rival. However, during the time skip, Zoro makes a pivotal decision that marks a shift towards self-actualization. He asks Mihawk to train him. This moment reflects his recognition that the path he had clung to, defeating Mihawk out of guilt and unresolved loss, was no longer sufficient to meet his deeper needs. Rather than continue clinging to a coping mechanism based in rivalry and ego, he chooses humility, growth, and mastery. By seeking out Mihawk as a mentor rather than an enemy, Zoro moves toward a more sustainable pursuit of his goal, becoming the world's greatest swordsman through learning, not just winning. This shift illustrates his dissatisfaction with his earlier satisfier and a step forward in his journey towards self-actualization, becoming the world's greatest swordsman and the fullest version of himself. By diving into the motivational psychology of Nami, we can unravel how her fierce independence, once a shield for survival, becomes the greatest obstacle to saving her own village. Until next time, keep sailing the seas of self-discovery, one chapter at a time.